On this week's episode of the Geek State, welcome to Jurassic World, Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler.
Sony had a state of play this week, and in February, play we will.
We hit Control-Alt-Delete and dive into reboots and revivals and share listeners' picks for shows they would like to see rebooted. All that and more on this episode of the Geek State.
Jurassic Park, where the giant dinosaurs live again, with all the excitement of the movie.
Dino damage!
Look for the JP mark, only at Jurassic Park.
Stand by alert.
This is it.
That guy down the street with the bedazzled jean jacket has not even heard of this podcast. This is the Geek State.
Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of The Geek State, the podcast about all the cool stuff going on in the world of geek. We're bringing it to you here. We've got stuff about movies and video games. In fact, there's a ton of stuff to talk about on the show. So let's just get this started. I'm Chris, and joining me as always, my buddy James. Buckle up, James. You ready?
I am so ready. I cannot believe that you even thought about changing that introduction. It was so seamless, so beautiful, and I loved it.
You'll have to, I guess, maybe wait till the end of the show to hear the alternate take, like, you know, what I was trying out, you know, trying to go with something clever. Yeah, there's always a little something there at the end. But for real, there is a ton of stuff happening today. This was one of those days where I got home and was like, man, I'm so thankful that a lot of stuff happened today, as opposed to what normally happens, which is happening, you know, usually would happen like tomorrow. Everything would happen the day after we record, and then the next time we get around to do the show, it's all like old news. It's old stuff. No one wants to hear us talk about that old stuff. But we got the new stuff, so it's pretty cool. Just right off the bat, last night, got home, downloaded Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Outcast on the Switch. And played around in that and got to kind of relive some old memories, and it's at a great price point. It's only $10. Don't know if you've had a chance
price
to.
Point.
Yeah, full first person, you know, first person adventure story with, you know, the cutscenes and all that. Definitely dated. And it definitely has, like, I'm used to, I guess, more modern first person type games than I thought, because I was getting turned around and lost, and, you know, the game design of it didn't lend itself. There's a point in the game right at the beginning where Jan is like, come back, I need your help. I'm like, I don't know where the hell I am.
Yeah,
I don't know where to go.
You know, the old Doom, I used to always play those games with the like overlay map on top. You know what I'm talking about? How you could like push tab and it would put up the see-through map. It's like the only.
I don't think that's available. I could be wrong. I also would let you know, you have to crank up. I mean, maybe it's my old eyes, but that game is dark. Like, you get
really?
There's areas in the map where I'm like, am I supposed to go over there? It's completely dark. And then I got into the settings and I cranked up the brightness. I'm like, oh, there's a door there. I need to go there. I got lost and was like, there's got to be a way. I got to know how to get out of this area. And thankfully, cranking up the brightness did it for me, because I was playing in handheld.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I don't have fond memories of Jedi Knight 2. I definitely played a lot of Jedi Academy, which is
the
Jedi
next
Knight
one.
3. The naming convention of these games is just bonkers, because Jedi Knight was the sequel to Dark Forces, so Jedi Knight was Dark Forces 2, and then you came out with Jedi Knight 2, which is really Dark Forces 3. It's just unacceptable. Yeah. It's unacceptable what's going on over here.
It is. But
we get
that
Jedi,
was cool.
Fallen Order soon, so.
Oh my God!
And this leads me to believe that maybe some characters from Jedi Knight 2 might be making some appearances or something.
I don't. You know what? That'd be interesting. I would be interested to see if that ever happened.
Or whatever his name is.
Katarn. Yeah, that would be cool. Very Star Warsy name. We've got some other stuff to talk about, but James, you've been up to some stuff too, man.
I have, yeah. So obviously I'm very into retro games. And for the longest time, I always told myself that I would really kind of stay away from the stuff that I didn't have any attachment to as a kid or anything like that. But Chris, sometimes the deals just fall into your hands and there's just nothing you can do but buy low, sell high kind of thing. And I fell into some not unique pickups, but just some kind of lesser pickups being I got in one big bundle 2 systems that I don't have and a ton of games for them, being the Sega Master System, which is the NES competitor for Sega, as well as a TurboGrafx 16. So I am now the proud owner of both of those.
And now you need games. Now you need to fill out the libraries. You've opened up a whole can of worms that I don't think you understand. It's like buying one Funko Pop. I don't
know that will be an issue because the Master System came with 38 games. So I have plenty to start with there. The TurboGrafx is a little less so, but TurboGrafx games are also very expensive. And that's the only reason I bought them is because I got an insane deal. I bought the Turbo System and the games for about half the price of just a Turbo System or TurboGrafx. Oh, wow. So
nice.
I was very happy with my finds. So thank you, Facebook, and thank you, Juan, who helped me out with that. Met at a Starbucks.
It's good. Always meet at a public location. Yes. Like when I bought a classic Game Boy off of someone from Facebook for $25, and it came with Tetris and Pikachu Yellow, the Pokemon Pikachu edition, for $25. And I was like, oh yeah, let's meet at this bookstore in the parking lot.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. And just a pro tip out there, a lot of police stations have places to do pickups like that. Meetup.
That's true.
And even not, you can probably just say you want to do it at a police station. And if they say no, that's probably not somebody you want to do a deal with. So
that's true. That's solid advice. Solid pro tip. You heard it here on the Geek State. Stay safe out there when you're buying stuff from randos on the internet. Speaking of the Internet of Things, segue is falling apart. Amazon. Let's just go with that. Amazon had a big unveiling today of a bunch of new gadgets and things. It's kind of a news topic, but I'm just going to talk about a couple things. That's why it's not in the news section. But and I don't know too much about them yet because it literally just happened. But they got on stage. They were like, here's our new speakers and cameras and, security stuff, whatever. But then there were some a couple of things that I was like, all right, I want to talk about a few of these things. One is a device called the Echo Loop, which is a ring. It's like a brushed titanium looking ring. And when you watch somebody use this on like a review video, it literally looks like they're lifting their hand to their face to kind of whisper a secret. And then you have to hold it to your ear in order to hear Alexa's response, which it looks completely silly. The only thing I think this thing would be cool for, James, if it's like, hold on, I got to take a call, and you make that hand gesture like I'm on a phone call, where you hold it up to your head, and then you've got that ring on your hand.
There you go.
And you can actually
receive the phone call that way.
And and that's the thing, you actually can. There's you can even save a favorite. So if you've got someone you always talk to, you can double tap the little button area on this ring, and it'll call whoever you've got saved as that person. So I thought that was like an interesting thing. I think people should go check it out. It's by invite only, so you have to click that, put me on the list, basically. The other one is I was like, oh, first I thought it was like Google Glass or something, but it's Echo Frames. And it's a pair of lenses that you can get, a pair of frames for your glasses or whatnot. You can put your own prescription lenses in, and it has speakers built into the sides of the glasses that are aimed at your ears with a microphone, and it can tell you and read your notifications. You can talk to Alexa, which I can't believe I just said it. I said her name.
That's okay. Mine's set to never mind.
Nope, don't say it, because somebody else out there is listening in their car and it's going to trigger something. You can listen to your music and stuff. That's pretty cool. Here's the thing. Now, here's the one thing that I was like, all right, I wish that there was a audio sample of this. It's not available yet because it's not out yet. And they did not, as far as I can tell, demo this quite yet. But the Echo is going to change her voice. If you want it to, you can, first of all, they're doing some multilingual stuff, and they're making her voice sound more natural, which I think is pretty cool. But they're unveiling a celebrity feature, and it's not like how Waze did it, where it's pre-recorded celebrities saying like, at the next stop sign, take a left. They're calling it like a neural text to speech something, and it's celebrities. And of course it's licensed, and you'll have to pay a little bit for this. And they did not disclose how much, but I'm sure for the novelty of it, it won't cost that much. But the first person that they're going to have available is Samuel L. Jackson.
Which makes sense. People would want that. But that technology that they're using is actually really crazy. There was a video recently that released, and it's Joe Rogan doing a podcast with Joe Rogan, and it's all artificial intelligence doing it.
Oh my gosh.
And it's essentially him talking to himself, but not only the voice being spot on and the like the emphasis on his words and like his reactions and things were all spot on, but like the conversations that he was having with himself were also very interesting. It got to a point where he was talking about a monkey hockey team. So it was very on brand. But it was pretty crazy that was able to happen. And
the future is kind of terrifying, like with the deep fakes and then the audio stuff. Like it's kind of getting scary.
Well, sir, if you want it to get even more scary, you need to Google the Boston Dynamics robot videos that they released this week, because they released a trailer, really like a commercial for their dog one, like what it could do in your home. But they also released a like behind the scenes video of their like bipedal one. And this thing is doing backflips. This thing is running. Oh, no. This thing is jumping. It is crazy.
Next thing you know, that guy's going into a store and just buying a gun.
I guess.
You know, we won't touch that. But I'm just saying, it's the Terminator, man. Like that's what happens.
It's crazy. And it's also not just one direction. It is making cuts. It is turning. It is doing 180-degree turns, like jumping up in the air and turning 180 degrees. It's crazy. And if you knock it down, it gets back up. Terrifying stuff going on in the world of technology. Man,
there's some terrifying things for sure, but there is some really cool stuff heading our way. So let's head on into the news. A lot of really cool stuff going on in the news. And James, this is kind of your wheelhouse. We had this Sony, the PlayStation State of Play. So what happened with that?
Yeah, so the State of Play happened. This is kind of Sony's version of the Nintendo Directs. They clearly stole the idea from Nintendo. They're quite enjoyable. It's usually for kind of, most of the previous ones. I think there's been two so far. They've both been kind of, a lot of the little stuff has been announced. This is the first one where people were super excited for, because we hadn't heard about The Last of Us for a while. We also hadn't heard anything about PS5, which I think those people were crazy, because you're going to get PlayStation Experience in December, and that's where we'll probably hear about PlayStation 5. But yeah, at any rate, so they have had the State of Play, and it did have a couple things, and then obviously ended on a big point with Last of Us Part 2. But we'll just run through it real quick. What they did, they had a new trailer for a game that's coming out called Humanity that's supposed to release in 2020. Didn't really show much about this game other than the fact that it's like it looks like some sort of puzzle, like large or battle system. I couldn't really tell what was going on. There were a lot of people floating on the screen. It just didn't make much sense. We also got a new trailer for Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which is a reboot of the Modern Warfare franchise. It looks very cool. A lot of the early talk in this is that it's quite good. It plays quite well. I've always been a Call of Duty campaign advocate. I always get it from Redbox and play the campaign and don't even touch online anymore, because I'm never going to dedicate enough time to be good at it.
Same, exactly. I get excited. Like I thought when I picked up, I forget which one it was. I bought it and was like, I'm going to get some online stuff in. And I got in and I was like immediately killed. Yeah, the online is just not fun, but the campaigns are so fun and the gameplay is so fun. It's such a tight shooter, and it always puts you in these crazy set pieces, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm pretty excited about that game coming out. We did get a new trailer for it, and then they also, I don't know if they announced it at State of Play or right after, but they announced that there will be a mode that is a PlayStation exclusive until October 2020, which is kind of interesting. It's like a mode within a mode, so it's not anything too crazy. But another thing that was announced
is LA Noire VR coming to PSVR, which it's already out on Oculus, I believe, but it's coming to PSVR. People liked it on the computer. Obviously, there's no reviews out yet or at the time of recording that I know of for the PSVR version because it just got announced yesterday and it released the same day. And then a lot of nerds got real excited about Wadham, which is the it's the next game by the Katamari Damacy creator, which he makes very weird games. So looks interesting, looks funky as always. Let's see. One other thing we got the announcement of the Death Stranding PS4 console, which comes with a controller that it's yellow. I don't know what else to say about it. It looks like the thing he carries the baby in. It's that color. Okay. Don't really care. I think that game's going to be one of the biggest flops of all time. People are so excited about it, but they're dumb.
Just note it. We'll put a little note in the show notes. Like, this is where we made a prediction about something. Come back and revisit.
It's going to be a game about absolutely nothing. I'm sure it will. I'm sure the story will be fine. I think, but Kojima has always been infatuated with making movies and not really making games. True. So I don't think that it will be a great game to play. Hype on that. Civ 6 is coming to PS4 for anyone who likes to make fake war. Medieval, we got another trailer for that. And then the demo released yesterday. Haven't had a chance to get into that, but I will let you guys know next week what I think of that.
Yeah, please do.
And then I don't know if this was already announced, but they did release the price point of $29.99 for that game. Which is kind of where I think that's right where, or maybe just under what the Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, all those are getting in at. So pretty good price point there.
I was going to say on the Switch, the Crash Bandicoot stuff's like 30 something bucks for like the triple, triple. I've seen it on sale for cheaper, but I think that's about the right price range, especially since it's not just they're not just porting it. It's a remastered game. Like what I've seen.
It is a complete remaster. All the graphics are redone. Everything's redone. So it should be interesting. And then finally, obviously, they hadn't talked about it for a while, but Last of Us Part 2 got a release date of February 20th, 2020, I believe. And just for everyone out there, that would be 11 days before Final Fantasy VII Remake. So you're really going to have to get this one taken care of quickly if you want to quickly then move on to Final Fantasy VII. Another interesting point, they announced or they showed the box art for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it still doesn't say anything about being part 1, but the only gameplay we've gotten from anything or any images, anything we've gotten from it is all from Midgar, which is the beginning of the game. So I don't think this is going to be the full game of Final Fantasy VII Remade. I think that would be insane. So make sure you hedge your expectations on that one.
Yeah. Well, State of Play came up on our Instagram. We posted a thing about, on our story, like, what are you most excited about? And Andrew, that was his thing he was most looking forward to, maybe just in the immediate future, but it came up there on our Instagram story. So thanks for everybody who participated in that one. Kind of continuing on in the video game realm here a little bit, also going on at the time of recording is Oculus Connect 6, which is, of course, Oculus's big conference. And, they're showing off all the games and all the stuff that's coming and how the, technology is evolving and changing. And we got some kind of preliminary information about how well the Quest is doing. There was something about that the Quest store has made like $100 million and that over the course of its lifetime, and that the Quest alone, and it's only been available since like May, is attributed to $20 million. And they're basically selling them as fast as they can churn them out and get them made. So that's good news if you own a Quest like myself. A couple of really cool things that are coming soon. One of them is that they say next year the Quest will be able to track fingers, so you won't need your controller. Not a lot of details that I have on that, but that's cool. A big one that if you're a PC gamer and you got a beefy PC that can do VR, but you just don't have an Oculus Rift. If you own a Quest, they're going to have a thing available through a software update called Quest Connect, which will let you plug in your Quest via the USB-C port on the device into your computer, and you'll have access to play any of the stuff that's in the Oculus Rift store. So you'll be using, you're kind of giving up that thing that you bought the Quest for, right? Like being untethered and not connected to something, but you'll be able to play a bunch of other games that aren't yet available to play on the Quest because the Quest can't, maybe handle the graphical intensity of it. So that's pretty cool. But
you'll also need a very long USB-C cord.
Oh my gosh, yes. Have you been to a gas station and seen those those 10, 11 feet?
They're ropes.
Yeah.
They're for strangling people.
You could legit do a double Dutch tournament outside of a brownstone, with those cables that I've seen there.
Or a Wawa for all you Northeasterners out there.
Is that a different name for the same thing? What is that?
Well, Wawa's like a gas station.
Oh, gotcha.
It's like their version of Buc-ee's, but it's a lot smaller and there's a lot more of them.
Makes sense. The big one, the thing that I'm excited for, I'm always excited to sit down with James and do the show, but I'm also very excited for the show to be over because on my Quest right now, which I did not see this coming, basically. They showed the trailer from ILM X Labs. They showed the Vader Immortal episode 2. And at this point, we'd only seen a couple of screenshots. We knew that you could use the Force and grab things and throw things. And, there was a bunch of new stuff to it, but we didn't know much else. And then at the end of the trailer, it's it's available now. And I was just like, what? Immediately I got on my phone and got into the Quest store and bought it. So it would be downloaded when I got home. It looks incredible. So I cannot wait to travel back to Mustafar, and I will tell you guys all about it on the show next week. Woke up to some other news. This is kind of a little. This is like a baby story, James. Right? We're getting some Jurassic World updates after that Jurassic World short film.
It's an exciting baby update. Speaking of which, I didn't hear a word about that Jurassic Park short film, and I also didn't watch it, so I don't know anything about that.
We talked about
Okay, I know we talked about it, but we talked about it, but I just it did not make a peep in my social media at all, which is kind of interesting. So I completely forgot about it. So.
It's worth checking out.
You have Vader Immortal coming for you this evening, and I just have Survivor. So, that's the life we all live.
Yeah, it's okay. But tell us what's going on with this Jurassic World update.
Yeah, Jurassic World 3 is going to be adding 3 cast members, being Ali Grant, Ellie Sattler, and Ian Malcolm. Obviously, not the names of the actors, but the names of who they play.
Right.
But, it's now I'm blanking on all of their names. Jeff Goldblum.
Right.
Oh my God, this is embarrassing.
It's Laura Dern,
and the guy from Sam Neill.
There you go. All right.
Spelled Niel or Neil.
It's a weird spelling. Yeah.
Yeah, Scottish, I think, maybe. I don't know.
I think so. No, I think he might be Australian or New Zealand or he's from that area.
We don't care. It doesn't matter.
We don't.
It really doesn't matter. He was terrifying in Event Horizon, and I'm just not really interested in him anymore. So, but yeah, what I did find funny about this announcement is that in my social media feeds, they were saying all the feeds said, so coming to Jurassic Park to play Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm. It's no shit. What are they going to come? Are they going to be in Jurassic World 3 and play someone else? They're going to be playing Velociraptors.
They're all puppeteering small compies, as they going across the screen. I mean, and the nice thing is, at least, because when I first read this, I literally rolled out of bed and got on Twitter and saw this, and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, but are they just going to be like how Ian Malcolm was in the last one, where it was just a glorified cameo? Colin Trevorrow, who of course is the executive producer, was the director on the first Jurassic World, and was at one point the director for Rise of Skywalker before it had a name and before JJ was doing it. He said that they are coming in a sizable role. So take that with however you want to take it. I don't think that they're replacing the main character, which this is again going to be a Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt, featured kind of thing, because this is their story. But I'm glad to see them brought in, and I'm hoping that this is sort of like, let's put a pin in this for now. Like let's it's cool because they are from the first one. Now they're in the last one. Let's wrap this whole thing up and send them off to some, dinosaur island, and that's it for a while. They'll bring it back because reboots are a thing. And of course we'll talk about that. Some other news, James, that's kind of making the circuit. And I'm curious to the timing of this release. So Bob Iger, who is the CEO and chairman of the board of the Walt Disney Corporation, has a book out, and it's called The Ride of a Lifetime. And there's some interesting stuff to be kind of found, and people are, as they're discovering it, they're sharing it on social media. And some interesting stuff about how Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs was at one point on the board at Disney. Bob was on the board at Apple, and Steve would call Bob when he saw a movie that wasn't good. Like he would call and tell him, hey, that movie was no good, or I didn't quite like that. That one was a stinker. But the one specifically, and this is a quote from the book, he says that when Iron Man 2 came out, Steve Jobs took his son to see it, and he called me the next day and he said, I took Reed to see Iron Man 2 last night. He said it sucked. So like there's some really interesting like little candid moments that are in this, and I think that's interesting, like the relationship that Steve Jobs had. But there's another thing that's kind of making waves on the internet right now, and it's not news. It has to do with George Lucas and the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney. It was pretty clear once we got close to The Force Awakens what George thought about this whole thing. I mean, he literally called Disney like white slavers at the time. We know, I mean,
cancel Disney.
It's a direct quote. He said that to like Charlie Rose. But so Bob Iger goes into detail about how this went through, and how George, before the sale, was like, hey, here's these story treatments. And Disney was like, we should buy these. No, we should buy everything. And Bob was like, if we buy these, we can change what we want, and we want you to understand that. And apparently he felt like Lucas understood what the deal was, but that he probably thought, well, but I'm George Lucas, right? Like they're not going to change what I said. And so Bob says, I could have talked him through. I could have talked through this with him and possibly avoided angering him by not surprising him. Now, in this first meeting with him on the future of Star Wars, George felt betrayed. And while the whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start. And the reason why I wondered why this book came out when it did is considering all the backlash from The Last Jedi. And this is just stoking the fires of these same people that are, that hate on the Disney era and, are like, George deserved better. I can guarantee you, James, and give me your opinion on this. I think that I feel like episode 7 would have been a success financially, regardless, had Disney bought it, had Lucasfilm remained independent, right? The excitement for it would be at the same level. You're talking like Phantom Menace level excitement, where it didn't matter. We didn't know. We just knew it was more Star Wars. But I honestly feel like, even though Lucas felt that the new Star Wars, and this is in Bob's book, lacked innovation and lacked going to a new, setting and environment. And that's some of the criticisms that we had as fans, right? Like, this is Tatooine. Oh, it's Jakku. Well, why? Like there was a lot of that kind of stuff. But I'm just questioning the timing of this book, that I felt like it should have waited, but we're talking about it. So there's, something potentially to it. I'm kind of interested in reading this book just to see kind of what else. It's very candid and behind the scenes stuff and all that. So I'm just curious, from everyone listening, what what are your thoughts on some of this stuff that's going on? Like we know that George consulted on the Rise of Skywalker, that he was brought in, that JJ felt it, necessary to ask him things and stuff like that. So, of course, we're entering the fall season, and we're about to get kicked into high gear next week for Star Wars. We've got Triple Force Friday coming. Which is when they release all the merchandise. That's going to be October 4th. Stuff for the Mandalorian, stuff for the Rise of Skywalker, and stuff for the Fallen Order is all going to hit stores all at the same time. It's going to be a lot of. That's
also late, isn't it? Isn't it usually in like early September when they do that for December? Because I know it was Labor Day weekend for Episode 7. I distinctly remember that because I was in Virginia at the time. But
everything was a little early for The Force Awakens.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense
because we got a teaser trailer over a year in advance. We got that Thanksgiving teaser thing. So we were kind of already in the marketing machine. And I think they're kind of waiting this thing out just a little bit longer than I feel comfortable, because that D23 special look wasn't supposed to be a trailer, but then they were like, wow, everybody loves it. Let's let this thing be our second teaser trailer.
Right. Because
I honestly think if they had not gone in that direction for D23, we would have had a second teaser trailer, like a proper one already. And then later October, we're going to get the final, proper trailer. So, and there's everybody online is trying to figure out like, when is it going to happen? I'm like, guys, it's going to be like a Monday Night Football. Like that's what they've done.
Yeah.
It's like Monday Night Football, lots of eyes. It's ABC. That's how it's going to work. So, Star Wars.
Well, Monday Night Football's on ESPN now, I think. So,
okay.
It might be a little different, but
still Disney.
Yeah, right.
All the same company.
We got the officials counting.
This is a feature presentation.
And now, on with the show.
Over the years, Hollywood has dipped into older franchises and properties and brought those back to the audiences. Reboots and revivals are not a new thing, but it seems like over the last few years, we've seen a lot more of those reboots, revivals, and remakes, both in TV and movies. I mean, this year we've seen Pet Sematary, Lion King, Aladdin, Hellboy. I would argue that Men in Black International is essentially a reboot because of a new cast. So there's all this stuff that's going on with reboots, and it kind of struck me. I was like, well, what is it exactly? What's the criteria, James? Like, we're not Hollywood executives. I know that, but when you look at, the stuff that's been rebooted over the past, 10, 20 years or whatever, like kind of what are some of the criteria that make it like a warranted reboot?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. So I think the number one and most important piece to a reboot is you have to be capturing a new audience. It has to have been long enough for your original, for like Lion King, let's say, has to be long enough for your original audience to be adults and maybe have their own kids. You know what I mean? That would be interested in Lion King. Like, I think
that's one of the key ones. I think you hit on the most important almost.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to give it time. You can't just, I mean, it's a fine line because you can't, if something was good enough and 10 years later it's good enough for a reboot, you're probably just going to make a sequel to that thing. Right. It's
true.
Like,
right.
It's one of those things where you make sequels for the things that are good. And then if you're able to do that, I mean, in almost everything on this list, yes, everything on that list that you just read had a sequel. I believe Pet Sematary had a sequel. I'm 99% sure, but, all these things had a sequel, and then you let them lay off for long enough, and then you are able to, go back and reboot them once time has passed. And everyone who saw Pet Sematary in theaters is now, 30 years older, 25 years older. And there are kids who have never even heard of Pet Sematary that are now of age to go see an R-rated film. So I think that's the most important
or they've heard of it.
Right.
Or they're aware that Pet Sematary is a thing, but they don't want to watch an old dated thing because kids these days, they look upon something from the 70s or 80s and they're like, God, this is so old looking. It's so dated.
Yeah, and I was about to say, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's kind of also it too. It's like, well, here's something that, it hasn't aged well.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's a decent story, but if you watch it now, you're like, wow, this is super old feeling.
Yeah. Something, I think my number 2 was going to be that something has to change in the way that movies are made to make what your product different than what it was before. Right.
True.
You have to, whether it's, Lion King was done in a completely different way. Aladdin was done in a completely different way. Hellboy was done in the same way and it still sucked. Men in Black, kind of,
Oh, so I like the original, Ron Perlman Hellboy.
The Ron Perlman, the Ron Perlman
Red
Hellboys
Thanos
were perfectly fine. I have no problem with them. The new one, unfortunately, was not very good. Did I Redbox that? I rented it. Maybe is it out on Blu-ray yet?
I think it is. If it's, of course it is. It has to.
Yeah, I think I rented that one. But anywho. Yeah, I think something has to change in the way that movies are made that you really, it changes the way that you're able to present the same source material if you're not changing what the source material, right?
Of course. So these are like basically these are what we're discussing is really like what makes what makes it warranted, because I think kind of the examples that we could really pull would be more of the successful stuff, but there's oftentimes when reboots and stuff are just, quick money grabs, because we're talking about, studios that need something and, or they've got a license that's going to expire. So they've got to make something with it before they lose it, or it's name recognition only, and they don't really know what else they're going to do with it. I mean, I'm looking squarely at like the Megan Fox Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I kind of like.
Which I defend those. Like, I'm fine with those movies because I mean that kind of brings me to what I was really wanted to kind of point out when you told me this was a topic, is I think the most important rule to reboots is not about how they do reboots. It's about managing your expectations. There were so many people like that I work with, or in my that I talk to on a regular basis, who saw the new Lion King and they were like, "Oh, it wasn't that good." And I'm like, "Bubba, you're 40 and you saw a children's movie. You're 40, and you saw a kids movie. Hedge your expectations at what you're going into,
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, absolutely. They're like, "Oh, this is the greatest movie ever. It's going to be awesome." And it's like, no, you're still going to see a kids movie. Like, it's not going to, Lion King didn't grow up with you, unfortunately.
Listening Star Wars fans, you listening? Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. But I would say the reboot of the Matthew Broderick Godzilla. That's a stinker.
That is a stinker. There's
a lot of those, like the Total Recall remake, and there's a ton. I mean, we're not going to go through a list.
Right.
But there's been some stories recently circulating that this is really what prompted me. I was like, let's talk a little bit about reboots and all that kind of thing. There's a story about the Princess Bride that was going to be remade, or some sort of either continuation or something. And the internet, of course, being very vocal behind their keyboards, was like, no, this should never be done. And of course, there was also some cast and crew from the original that were just not happy with that idea. And there's definitely some franchises. We asked on Facebook about what are some stuff that deserved a reboot, or could get a reboot, or maybe should get a reboot. And before we get to this list, and first of all, thank you everybody for participating in that. You can always do that on our social media when we ask. But Reed, and this is not in the show notes, it was basically like, I don't have anything to say should get a reboot, but the never ending story should never be touched. And I was like, I kind of put that one in there with Princess Bride. I think people love that movie as it is. I can honestly see it being remade at some point, but there'll be the people vocally calling out. So let's talk about some of these that I pulled. Mm-hmm. There's more that I didn't pull. There were some repeats and some stuff too. But the first one, now this is probably going to happen on, of course, our favorite new streaming service, the Peacock. it's The Office, and that's been talked about recently. As much as I want to see more in that, from that, I feel like the stories, I think they're going to have to redo so much of that show to make it appropriate for 2019, 2020's
Exactly.
audience.
I think this falls into rule number 1. Not enough has changed around the Office environment to really reset that whole, it's you're going to be making the same show. I mean, obviously there's brilliant writers out there that have a ton of Office jokes and a ton of premises that haven't been made yet, but it's just kind of, I mean, I haven't watched all of The Office, so I'm not the best to opine on something like this, but I mean, it just doesn't, I feel like everyone who saw The Office, I don't know a ton of people who are saying, I want more Office. They're happy rewatching all of the great Office that already existed on Netflix.
Yeah. And that's why it's being sold for so much, that's why it's being, to get it over onto the Peacock. But I also think that it's going to be hard because a lot of the comedy comes from, the Michael Scott, the boss type character who does really awful things and says really awful things in an office, setting that now is just completely inappropriate, especially for broadcast, TV. Like Michael Scott would be strung up on, numerous HR stuff and fired in, the first couple episodes of the original series.
That's the beat of most of 3 of the biggest live action sitcoms out there, being Seinfeld, that, and Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You're following your main people or person are terrible people. And they don't realize they're terrible people. Like they're just living their lives as these people and not understanding that what they're doing is not okay and not right. But that's what, how the shows move. Like that's what drives the show, is the fact that, they're not good people. If all the main characters on these shows were good people, there's not really much to watch, and even Good Place, its whole premise is that the main characters are not good people. Right. So, and that's one of the best comedies on TV right now. So I think that you have to have that. Yeah. And you have to, I think that's the problem that The Office might run into, is that you can't really have that anymore.
Oh, I agree.
In our woke culture.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to happen. That's the thing. There will be some sort of Office reboot or revival or continuation that they're going to go for the cash. They're going to get it. It'll last for a little bit and it'll be over. Sean, who is an old high school buddy of mine, funny story before I tell him what he suggested. So Sean and I went downtown Dallas. We went to downtown Dallas to the now I can't remember. It used to be kind of a cool hit play. Oh, the West End. Yep. And there was a TV show that was sort of like a proto podcast. Like it was on television, but you could stream it on like the, audio on broadcast.com or whatever. Like at the time, like that was the, like using the real player. It was called like Net Talk Live. And they did this big live event, and my dad went, and Sean, and I think Sean's brother went, and I think that was his brother. I can't remember. But we went down there because they were giving away this CD-ROM with all this stuff on it. And one of the things they were giving away that was the big draw was like a year or some sort of extended it was like some sort of extended Microsoft Office demo. Basically, like it was like a year, like a timed. Well, something happened in the production of that CD because everybody got a CD-ROM with a full-fledged copy of Office that required no software key to install. And my dad, to this day, I'm sure has a computer at his house that is still running whatever version of that Microsoft Office for like Windows 98. Still using that freebie. So this reminded me of that. So Sean suggested Alf, and I've seen this thrown around a few times on the internet, that people are pitching this as like, let's see Alf as a continuation, not like a straight up reboot. sort of like, and I don't know how Alf ended. And for those who are too young to know, Alf was a puppet. He was an alien from Melmac, and he was
cats. An alien life form. Hence the name.
That's what Alf stands for. Yeah, look at you.
So smart. I used to have an Alf toy. Never seen an episode. My dad was an Alf fan, I believe.
Okay. I don't recall really sitting down and watching a lot of Alf. I was very hyper aware of that was a show, but I didn't watch it. But I could get behind that. I think that would be an interesting kind of thing. Like maybe Alf has, he's gone for a while, comes back looking for, the same family, and maybe some people have passed away, and it's sort of like, let's just throw Alf into modern society, which is what the old show was. I think it could work. I think the puppet thing is going to be hard for some people, but
it's what I
think
Netflix
that's necessary.
Rocko's Modern Life movie did. I mean, why can't Alf do it?
James, why don't you do Bryson's real quick?
Yeah, Bryson. So this one kind of hit home to me. One of the greatest Sega Genesis games of all time. He suggested that they do a live action Gargoyles, being Disney's Gargoyles, the cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon that used to be on ABC. And I don't know that I want this live action, but I would love to see some sort of adult gritty reboot that grew up with me. That would be pretty great. And I think almost like a HBO series of Gargoyles is what I'm talking about, kind of thing. And sure, it could be live action or cartoon. I don't really care. When I think of it being a cartoon, I think of it being in the style of the Castlevania Netflix show. And in that kind of
anime-ish,
but very computer generated, not really, you can clearly tell it's not hand drawn type of animation. I think that would be really great.
So I can see this definitely being like, it would be kind of a hybrid. I definitely do not want like guys in suits.
Yes. Yeah, that's where my brain went when it said live action. And I thought of just this like Tin Man gray paint on somebody's face.
Like theme park mascots running around, New York or whatever. Like this would be kind of like, it's like the Ninja Turtles. It's our gargoyles are, photoreal CG, and they're interacting with humans and stuff like that. I think it could work. In fact, Jordan Peele last year was pitching this to Disney. And it didn't go anywhere, but that kind of tells you that there's some big people out there that are, interested in it. And who knows, Bryson, might get our live action Gargoyle. Jason on Facebook said Men in Black, but he was kind of like, not like Men in Black International, because we already got that. He's saying like reboot Men in Black, but it's like a grittier noir police procedural kind of thing, and he went through a bunch of different details just about, and I was sort of getting into this idea that it's this kind of like actual secret organization that doesn't play off of jokes or the the comedy side of it, right? That it's really let's take this on us, like just make a serious version of this. And it could be really interesting, and for it to see something like this, not as a comedy. Now, I think the hard part about that is I don't think you can get away with calling it Men in Black and changing changing the format so completely. I think you could make that story, but you'd have to call it something else, and it would be kind of something.
It's almost like an X-Files reboot. Is kind of what that would
be,
along those lines.
Which they also did on that. Yeah, they also rebooted the X-Files.
Right, but that reboot was very much the same X-Files. It was very similar to the beats of the old X-Files shows. So
absolutely, yeah.
But we have Megan, who also said that she would be interested in a Freaks and Geeks reboot. She also said that, and I agree with her 100%, that uncertain about recasting, but would like to know where the story would have gone. So we're talking about these high school kids, but now they're, 35, that type of show, which I could totally get behind.
I think that could be actually pretty successful. I mean, even considering the fact that you've got a lot of, the people that started off on Freaks and Geeks are now like massive stars.
Yeah. And the other big piece that you're running into with this one, the other big issue is that I was one of the characters in this show. Like I heavily relate to one, and everyone's boring. So being a in my mid 30s now, we're all boring. So it doesn't really amount to much.
I think that this could be a really successful, short, because in the world that we live in with streaming, I think that you can get away with like, let's just do a 3 episode, 3 to 4 episode thing, put it on Hulu. And I think it could be really successful. I could get behind that. I mean, obviously there's, people that would be like, no, let's redo it, or let's tell it and it takes place at the same high school, but now it's, somebody from the show has a kid and, and they're kind of in that same kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But, I think it'd be more interesting to see like the original cast do something. And I think it could be pretty successful. Another one, that the creators have said, we're never going to do this. It's never going to happen. But this is something that I feel like is inevitable. And we're going to probably see this in the next 10 to 15 years. Evan threw out Back to the Future. I can see them doing a remake of the original, but with key differences, stuff that would make it different. It's, I don't know exactly.
Protagonist.
Right. Maybe. Yeah. I mean,
not that that's a bad thing. That's not what I was saying, but it was just,
but that's just what's
it's in vogue.
Let's do this, but now it's starring dogs, right. Or let's do this and now it's all about children, or let's do Ocean's 11, but it's Ocean's 8, which I watched on an airplane, recently. Did not hate it, but also felt like it resolved itself very easily.
But in an airplane, your options are adjusting the air until your hand goes numb, or scratching the person's feet who have their feet from behind you against the window.
Or watching Crimes of Grindelwald, which I could not force myself to watch. Back to the Future could be really cool, and I think they could go in some really different directions with it. I think you keep that main storyline, but you change the timeline, because Back to the Future took place in the present day was 1985, and you went back to the 50s. And this you would bump up that timeline, so you would set it in modern time, and you're going back to the 80s, and then you're jumping forward and further into the future. I mean, we've got to have some other stuff to look forward to. I mean, 2015, everybody was freaking out like, oh, it's Back to the Future Day. This is when Marty went to the future. I think that could be really fun. And I don't think they even have to follow the same, they don't have to make Back to the Future 2 about the future. They can make it anything. They don't have to do the Western, they can go in any direction they want. They just have to establish the universe in the reboot. I think that could be really cool. And I know that there's people that's like, it's a perfect film, whatever. But money is money, and that is an important thing. Of course, I've got a reboot that I would love to see, and have talked about it before, but I'm not going to talk about it now. We're going to save all that for a whole other show. James, any properties or franchises out there that you would like to see as a...
Well, Chris, when I was a young child, even before I was a child, I believe that there was a show. You're going to have to bear with me for 1 second while I make sure.
Sure. We're going to do some live research.
Yes.
If there's anything about the Geek Status, we are accurate and factual. The answer to your
question is that I would love a reboot to the 1998 classic Saturday morning cartoon Dino Riders. I used to love these toys. Ooh. I think it can happen. I think you can make a live action Dino Riders and it would blow people's minds. And it takes place in the Marvel Action Universe. So
Does it really?
Let me check and see what Marvel Action.
Was it made by the Marvel Animation? Like, was it made as part of that Marvel block?
Yes, Marvel Action Universe is a weekly syndicated television block from Marvel Productions featuring animated adaptations of Dino Riders and RoboCop, and also obviously like X-Men. I think is what that fell into as well, and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. But yes, so
available on Disney
Plus. So yeah, I think that I've always thought about this show. And I used to have a lot of the toys, and I wish I still had them because they're very expensive because I've looked at trying to procure them again. But that is one that I would definitely be on board for getting rebooted.
I gotta say, I'm aware of this, and I remember the commercials for it, but I never saw this. And I'm going to seek this out. Maybe we do a, revisited episode where we do some of these old cartoons, and especially if it's streaming someplace, that'd be pretty cool. Honestly, I'd like to see like in the live action movie, and of course it'd have to be done right, and they've failed so many times on this, but I would love to see a crossover between Transformers and G.I. Joe, that they both exist in the same universe, and they could have done this a long time ago with the Transformers movies, had they done it correctly. But Hasbro owns the rights to both. They're doing stuff. It would be super cool, I think, to do something that takes itself seriously, but also not too seriously, and really just like has an opportunity to have some fun in that kind of environment. And they've even done some toys too, where it's like Starscream, but it's but he came packed with Cobra Commander, and Cobra Commander fits in the cockpit. Like there's a lot of crossover possibilities. I think that'd be super cool. If you've got a reboot or something you'd like to see, we'd love to hear it. Just tell us on Instagram or Twitter or on Facebook. Oh, honorable mention, Armando. I don't want to leave you out. You on Twitter, you threw out a ton of options, and like including Airwolf, Knight Rider. There's so many classic things. I mean, Knight Rider's been tried to reboot like 3 or 4 times, but I think give it some time. I think that one could potentially be done right. You just got to wait till Hasselhoff's like not involved in any way.
Let's look around the region and take our pick of the week.
Shut up and take my money.
Each week we like to pick something that is kind of carrying our stamp of approval. Actually, sometimes we have stuff that's like, hey, I did this. Warning, stay away. But this week, it's our pick of the week, something that we like. And James, as per tradition, I think it's only fair to let you go first.
I mean, that would make sense, but I just think that for once, it's your turn to go first. I've done this first for how many? 23 episodes? I think it's your turn.
23. I don't know. Well,
I think the 23rd pick should be yours.
Every 23rd, yes. I get to go
Jordan,
first.
You know, and LeBron James, but mostly Michael Jordan.
All right, so my pick of the week is on the Nintendo Switch. It's The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, which I picked up the other day, which I didn't realize this, but at least at my Walmart, all the Switch games are like $10 cheaper than like GameStop or Best Buy or Target. Instead of $59, it was $49. And that was kind of across the board. All the first party Nintendo stuff was $49. So I don't know about anything about that. I'm not super far into the game, and I was a little hesitant into getting this game, even though it's like everybody's talking about The Legend of Zelda and excited about this game. I've never had a successful experience with the top-down kind of Zelda stuff where I get too frustrated or whatever. But this game's got me. Like, I sat down and was like, oh, it's getting late. Like, I need to go to bed. I'm a grown up with responsibilities, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I love the style of it. It feels like kind of like it's like a toy box almost, you know, like here's your toys and the tilt shift.
Almost like Link is a pop figure.
Oh, you know, yeah, a little bit,
figure,
a
like
little bit.
Bold black eyes.
Yeah, I did get stuck a little bit where I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm here in the forest, but like, because I never had this on the original Game Boy, so I don't have the muscle memory that some people do. So I'm kind of like wandering around, and then this raccoon's like, hoo-hoo, now you're gonna be lost, and it's because of me. And I'm all like, what am I supposed to do? So I had to go on YouTube.
Yes, where you have to get the mushroom,
yes,
and then meet the witch.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I got the mushroom. I'm okay. Well, like, now what? And so I was like, okay, I'm giving up just for a little bit. I'm going to YouTube because, I mean, there's no guidebooks, you know?
Right.
So back in the day, you could have gotten a guidebook and no one would have shamed you for that. So I don't feel like it's any big.
But now it's in your search history, Chris.
Jeez. Now they'll know I didn't know what to do in the mysterious woods. But yeah, it's super fun. I am enjoying the heck out of it so far. So, James.
Well, Chris, it pains me to inform the people of this, but that was mine.
Oh, I stole it.
And you've stolen it from me. So I don't really have one. One thing that I will say is I too have gotten stuck a couple of times in this game. Okay. And I'm in the second to last dungeon, but I've also gotten stuck a couple of times in this game. And though I'm not a huge fan of their write-ups, but Polygon has a very excellent guide that's split up into all the segments, and you can go from one segment to the next and everything. So I would highly suggest Polygon. If you just do Polygon Link's Awakening, you'll be able to find it. And,
I'm going to need it.
They have pictures of all the dungeons and all that stuff. It's quite nice, the way to do it. I'm currently stuck, but I'm in the middle of a dungeon, so trying to figure out where I need to go, like start over kind of thing with the guide. So I have to kind of go and redo the dungeon per the guide, but obviously where chests are already open and things, Right. Anywho, it's a confuse. The bird tower it's for the birds. It's for the birds.
The birds. So it's good. And here, the thing with video games with me, it's not easy. If I die a lot or if I get stuck too much, I just kind of rage quit and I'm kind of done with it. With Marvel's Ultimate Alliance 3, we were trying to defeat Doctor Strange for the longest time. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't want to play this anymore. I'm just finished. It's just I get so frustrated. So I definitely need to pull up that Polygon guide. So, thanks
Chris,
for the tip
I didn't
there.
know that you had Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. I've been playing that by myself the whole time.
Oh my gosh, I could have helped you. Unbelievable.
Wow. Or I could have helped you. Somebody's past Doctor Strange, if you know what I'm saying. I'm just.
Or, there's also the fact that I don't think we're friends on Nintendo Switch. I think we need to.
That's true. I think I have one friend on Nintendo Switch. Shout out, Cody.
We need to fix that.
Sorry, I interrupted you. You were trying to close the show. You
I was
were trying
closing.
to get some dinner. I hear you. I'm sorry.
Gonna go to Mustafar, man. I gotta jump on the Oculus Quest and catch a shuttle to Mustafar. Gonna get on the Windfall. But yeah, no, that's the end of the show. Thank you guys and gals and aliens and whoever's listening out there in the galaxy to another episode of the Geek State. Thanks to everybody who participated in our Facebook and on our Twitter when we asked about reboots. We have some more of that kind of stuff heading your way. So if you don't already follow us on Facebook, we'd love to have you there. Just type in the search bar, The Geek State. You can also do that on Twitter. I think we're the Geek State Pod, and on Instagram, we're the Geek State Podcast. So just look for us there. We post stuff all the time, and we'd love to see you. So from everybody here at the Geek State, that's myself and James, stay excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler.
Welcome to Jurassic World.
All that, I know.
We did just perform a reboot of our own, so.
That's true. We're hitting Control, Alt, Delete, and rebooting this thing. This is the Geek State. Just kidding. That sucked. Here we go.